Alrighty, back a lot sooner than I would kind of expect I was, considering 1 month between episode 0, I guess I'm going to call it, and Shaun actually finally got back inside of a month, so yippee me. But, gotta continue on with the Cornetto Trilogy, which wasn't even a thing until this film, Hot Fuzz. Well, it's not a sequel to Shaun of the Dead in any way whatsoever. Sequels were tossed around, but they all fell through one reason or another. Nobody wanted to go with them. The idea didn't work, etc., etc. So Hot Fuzz came about. Edgar Wright wrote and directed with Simon Pegg, and instead of doing sort of a romantic comedy guy getting his life together story featuring zombies, this one is more of a what if you took all of the action movie tropes that so many of us grew up with through the 80s and the 90s, packed them all together and threw them in Britain, what do you get? And that would be this film. And I didn't even think about it the first time I saw it. And I'll admit, the first time I saw it, it was like, oh, it's from the same guys who did Shaun. That's a fantastic film. It was one of my favorites at the time. Still is. So coming into this one, I had very different expectations. And the first time I saw it, I didn't much care for it. It was kind of a, yeah, all right. It was not sorry I spent 2 hours watching it, but it just never clicked, I guess. But now that I've gotten a little older and I can notice that all the little cliche nods and all these little things that kind of stick out to it aren't stupid like they would be in a lot of lower quality films. They're more homages with a smile and a wink. Like the age old idea, I think it was in Rush Hour 2, follow the rich white man and you'll find your bad guy. Well, that's right in here. Same with the villain has a mustache, uh, that you'll see in a lot of 80s movies, 90s movies, even to today. Bad guy's got to have a mustache. I feel a little assaulted by that because I can't grow a mustache like this. It's a year of growth. So now you know a little more about me. But getting back to it, all those little things are kind of put in here entirely on purpose. Like there was a checklist when they were making out this movie, and they wanted to make sure not only did they give you the wink and the nod, they gave you the wink, the nod, and the payoff to it. And so that's kind of where the movie starts. Is with every one of those 80s 90s action movies, you always have the cop who's the best at his job. Just watch any early Steven Seagal movie, and that's pretty much who Simon Pegg is playing. Only instead of being Steven Seagal, he's Nicholas Angel, a London Metropolitan police officer who is the guy who holds the records and everything: bicycling, shooting, racing, all of it. He's top of the line. He's the best who will ever live. He's super cop, and that's kind of the problem. And it's like the first scene is after the montage of look how great he is. He's the best there's ever been. They tell him, you're too good. We're shipping you off to a small town called Sanford that has a zero crime rate at all. Like there's nothing that happens there. But we got to get rid of you because you make everybody else look bad. And anybody who's worked a job knows that. Knows the hey, you gotta tone it down a little bit because the higher ups are noticing you're doing this stuff so much better than the rest of us, and now they're starting to pile more onto us. Uh, yeah. And if you don't know that, ask somebody who's worked in a factory. They'll tell you, especially over the last couple of years. A lot of that has happened. And so Nicholas has to get all the stuff together, box it up, and head out for Sanford. And there's a one little scene right in between him being told to get lost and him literally going so far past nowhere he's found again, where he goes to see an old girlfriend, and she's a CSI or whatever they call it in Britain, one of the language barriers, and he's trying to have this conversation, but while she's trying to tell him, hey, this is it's don't feel too bad about all that, trying to give him a little bit of reassurance. He's looking around. He's like, oh, hey, did you notice that glass is broke from the inside, not the outside? And it's one of those moments where you kind of like, oh, okay, he's not a person so much as a cop. He doesn't have the off switch. He's always a cop, which is a generalized cliche about police officers, at least here in America, that you're always a cop. And I won't go so far as to say that that's not always false. Some people are like that, some aren't. Some are very much clock in, clock out. So when Angel gets to Sanford, he's introduced to the cops. It's a quiet town. There's no crime rate. It's a pretty town. Everybody's friendly, smiles, all that. Which is when he actually ends up meeting Danny, played by Nick Frost. And Danny might be... He's kind of like the caramel syrup on this movie. You just love him. And I think a lot of that comes from Frost's performance. Like, with Ed was a layabout jerk. Like, he's just very lazy, very... No, I'm good. I could go do this, but I could just take a nap too. He's one of those guys. Whereas Danny is more sheltered stupid. If you know somebody who's been sheltered, you know that that's not the same as stupid. Sheltered is just somebody who hasn't had the experience, whereas stupid is just somebody who's had the experience and it just went over their head. So he's almost got a childlike nature and innocence to him, which is kind of important because we learn that his mother died in an automobile accident, which comes in a little bit later. And Danny's father is the police chief, played by Jim Broadbent. And if anybody has seen the last 3 Harry Potter films, he's the same actor who plays Professor Slughorn. And he is just as fantastic here as he was when he played Slughorn. So there's my little HP trivia for the day. And Angel just kind of slides in a way. Again, he's just so perfect. When he wakes up in the middle of the night in his motel room and he just reaches over and hits the light switch. I'm 30 years old. I can guarantee you I have never reached for a light switch in the dark and hit it the first time in my life. So for him to be able to do it just that perfectly, it's one of those little crisp moments where, he's just a little bit too perfect. And as the story kind of goes, it's just quiet. He's not doing anything. Like, one of the first cases is there's a goose on the loose. Like, it broke free and it's running around town. Go get it. Like, it's just so mundane compared to what he would see in London, which is much more, hey, there's a robbery in progress, there's a murder, there's this, that, or the other. And this is so much more wound down. And on another case is, hey, somebody's got a bunch of firearms locked up. And they go and look, and okay, this guy is speaking straight up gibberish, so we got to get another guy in to translate the gibberish to less gibberish so Danny can understand it to tell Angel. Again, you kind of see it in some movies, that little bit of a language barrier, but this was we're going to tip our hat to it, but then we're going to make it just a little more absurd and cash that check. And then things start not adding up for Angel. Not only that the crime rate's so low, which he doesn't get, but he busts some underage kids for drinking, arrests them, and the next morning they're gone. They've all been let go. There's ice cream now, and it's very that doesn't click with him. He's very, a crime is committed, they are caught, they are taken to the justice system, not, oh, boys will be boys. So it grinds him. And then people start dying. A news reporter dies when a steeple from a church, I forget what it was, something busts loose, caves his skull in. Car accident. I'll get to that one in a minute. House fire, and it's not adding up. The reporter was misspelling. The actors in the house fire were terrible actors. And it's just, everybody is so straight-laced that it's just weird to him. until he ends up catching a murder in progress and chases them, but they round a corner and all of a sudden they're on the other side of the courtyard. Somehow they went from 10 yards ahead to 50 yards ahead. And it's kind of an odd Scream homage, I guess, for anybody who's seen those films of mass killer vanishing and all that. And it winds down and he's investigating it and he thinks it's the local store owner, the rich white man with a mustache, played by Timothy Dalton, named Simon Skinner. And okay, Skinner is just kind of a straight up, that's probably a bad guy name. Unless you're a principal in Springfield, but I digress. And Angel is so convinced it's him. It's gotta be him. It's gotta be him. This is the guy. But then there's surveillance footage. No, he was at the store at the time of the murders. He was with these people at the time of this murder. It couldn't have been him. It couldn't have been him. But it's gotta be him. It has to be him. The movie is showing you all 50 cards in the deck, but except for the last few. Like, it's got to be him. And then Angel winds down, and then he's so sure. And then in the middle of the night, he gets attacked by the heavy of Skinner, played by, I believe it was Rory McCann, the same dude who plays the Hound. I've got my notes here in front of me. And you don't even recognize the guy. The guy, he's Lurch is the name of the character, and he's tall, bald, and it just says Yarp. Hey, can you go stock this? Yarp. And away he goes. Kind of, again, it's another cliche that the heavy, the enforcer of the big bad, isn't the smart guy. He's just the big guy. He's the guy who's going to throw James Bond across the room. He's more of a physical threat than a mental threat. It's an action movie cliche that's kind of bled into a lot of other genres. I think it started in Westerns. And then Angel manages to win and gets a call from Skinner on Lurch's phone. Picks it up. Yarp. Did you get him? Yarp. And, alright. Well, then Angel tracks him back and finds out that it's not one killer, it's everybody's a killer. Everybody in town has kind of come together and decided to go full vigilante justice on criminals. The underage kids who were busted for drinking, they're all dead. Angel does find their bodies in this scene. And it's all for the greater good. The greater good. And they're not apologetic about it. Which is where I kind of got to lean back to Danny. He says that his mother died in an automobile accident. Well, Angel corrects him and says I think it was an incident. Because an accident means that nobody was at fault. And they have this little talk when, or in a much earlier scene when somebody gets into a car accident, Angel notices there were no skid marks. Anytime somebody gets into an accident, like they lose control or anything like that, they always hit the brakes. It's the first thing you do. It's an instinctive thing. But there were no marks. So there was something different here. Somebody was at fault here. It was malicious intent. Well, in a later scene, Danny says that his mother died in an automobile incident. He's been corrected because somebody was at fault here. And come to find out, his mother had actually committed suicide because of her own guilt over what the town was doing. And that drove, I guess, kind of a big wedge between Danny and reality, as well as his father. And it causes just enough of a shift that Angel can kind of get along with Danny. Danny's not involved with this. He knows of it, but it's that very indoctrinated with it. Like, he doesn't want anything to do with it. He just wants to be a cop. He wants to be a good cop. Like what he sees his dad as. Which is really how a lot of kids see their dads. Our dads are our first superheroes. And when your dad is a cop, that really means something. Well, unfortunately, his dad is very much in league with it's a small town, we're going to keep it safe, everything's for the greater good. The greater good. And ends up stabbing Angel. and chucks him in the trunk, and I'm going to go dump the body. Don't worry about it, Dad. Well, come to find out, Danny hid a ketchup packet in his pocket and jabbed it, so red and all that. And they have this little talk, and Angel tells him, we've got to do something. This isn't right. We got to do something. And Danny, a nice little beautiful homage to the movie Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. He tells him, forget it, Angel. It's Sanford. It's too big. You can't fight City Hall. One of those. A very, very good cliche, in my own opinion. Very much goes back to the earliest Westerns. If you've seen probably at least 75% of John Wayne films, it's a lot of that. And Angel he's done. He's going to walk away. He's defeated. Well, he ends up walking into a store and, all right, I'm on my way out. And he sees the dollar movie bin, and it's full action movies, which Danny is a big, big fan of. In an earlier scene where the two of them are hanging out and drinking, Danny takes him back to his place, and he's like, all right, Point Break or Bad Boys 2, which one do you want to watch first? Which is a nice little nod, and that's what gets Angel back into the fight, as it were. His second act, fall and rise again. And the first thing he does is go back to the police station, get all the firearms that they had confiscated in an earlier scene. Paying off. And it's another good thing that Edgar Wright really knows how to do, is he's going to write all these checks in the front, and he's going to cash every one of them at the back end. And so Angel literally rides into town on a horse with shotguns over his shoulder and loaded to the 9. He's ready to go. Well, unfortunately, so is everybody else in town. And it's a phenomenally well choreographed and good scene. And I think one of the most interesting things about it is I think there's one person killed between when he comes into town and the end credits. Spoilers. But during all this, Danny helps him out and teams up with him, and they're going to stop this. And so they start shooting their way through town. They drop signs on people. They hit people in the leg. They hit people in the face with the butts of the guns. And they're moving on and on and on. Well, Danny's dad, Frank, is very much, I'm just going to get the rest of the department in, and we're just going to arrest you guys. Like, I don't have to outshoot you. I just got to outmaneuver you. Well, Angel and Danny managed to kind of point out to everybody else who's just as much laid back as Danny was, that no, crime isn't that low because we're lucky. It's that low because these people are doing vigilante justice. And so now the entire police department's on Angel's side, and now it's time to go get Skinner. Frank is run off with a really, really fun little lion roar edit, which I kind of loved, especially because he's dual wielding revolvers. Again, a very action movie thing of the dual wielding pistols. And I've fired a pistol before. How anybody can hit anything dual wielding, I'll never understand. But they go after Skinner. Angel fights Lurch again, stops him, and then Skinner and Frank take off, and Angel and Danny follow, stop to catch the goose, because that's still an open investigation, and chase them all the way to this little model of Sanford, like a little tiny town model that's really pretty. It's really, really pretty. And fight. Well, Danny isn't going to shoot his dad. So anybody who's seen Point Break already knows pulls the gun on him. I can't shoot him. So he just fires the gun into the air. Which the channel Cinema Wins pointed out actually serves twofold. One, it's a beautiful homage. And two, if he doesn't empty that clip, Angel could come, grab it, and shoot Frank. So he's not going to let his dad get shot like that. He's got to do something. This was what he does. Meanwhile, Angel fights Skinner. And it's kind of wild looking back because it's Scotty from Star Trek fighting James Bond. And Angel wins, and Frank hops in the police car, and he's racing off. Like, he's going to get away from this. Except there's a goose in the back. Which gave me Jurassic Park vibes. Like, you know the scene. And Frank crashes the car, and he's caught. And so everybody's put up, photos taken, processed, paperwork, all that. and then they forgot another guy, and he comes in and shoots Danny, and then they push him back, and sea mine from like World War II that they also confiscated falls on the guy and goes off, blows up the entire police station with everybody inside, except everybody lived, but Danny's shot and he needs help. Cut to later, and Angel's bringing flowers to a grave, and here comes Danny because it's his mother's grave, because the hero doesn't die, which I think was a really interesting little expectation subversion there, because like Dirty Harry, every Steven Seagal movie, I think, has always had the partner die to motivate the hero. So it was nice to see Danny live at the end, and now Danny's a more hardcore cop, and Angel's more of a easygoing police inspector who even has the Metropolitan guys who told him to get lost out of London come back and invite him back to London. But he tells them, no, I'm good here. Like, Sanford, it's my home now. It's where I'll be. So, it's a lot of fun little action nods. A little bit of a subversion there. And I think it really kind of comes together pretty well. I said in my Shaun of the Dead review that it's kind of failed to live up to my earliest memories of it over time. But with Hot Fuzz, it's actually gotten better with later viewings, which is really hard for a lot of movies to do, especially comedies. But because this is more of an action comedy in the same vein as like Beverly Hills Cop or Rush Hour, I think it kind of works better that way. The writing, phenomenal. The sound design, really good. The choreograph work for the final fight, I think, does pretty well, because we've already established the town. When Angel goes jogging his first morning there, every single person he'll fight in the third act is exactly where he'll find them as he runs through town. Really good staging there. So I gotta hand it to Edgar Wright. If Shaun of the Dead was a proof that he knows what he's doing, this is the one where he says, I'm here, I'm gonna stay, here's what I'm bringing to the table, and not only am I bringing it to the table, I do a very good job with it. Nick Frost probably steals the show for me here. Like, I'm not afraid to say I've enjoyed him at all three of these films for the Cornetto Trilogy. Simon Pegg, I think, really steps out of a comfort zone with this one. With Shaun, it felt very comfortable for him to play this character. The easygoing guy who's just kind of not living up to his own limits, what he can actually do. Whereas with Nicholas Angel, this is a guy who's already maxed out his skill tree, and I think Peg really manages to knock that whole thing out of the park. He's always got the wheel turning, he's always looking, he's always paying attention. Timothy Dalton, he kind of gets the award for really just perfect villain. You know he's the villain, and he is just going to live it up. Just beyond perfect casting. Everybody else was really solid. A lot of the other vigilante people for the town don't really get a lot. So, same with a lot of the other police inspectors in Stanford. You know their characters, you don't know their names, but you know who they are. You know what they're about. So, all in all, I do think this is a pretty fantastic film. Is it as good as Shaun? Yeah, I think so. Everything lines up very well. Everything's settled at the end. There are no loose threads. If we got a sequel to Hot Fuzz coming in like the next year, I'd be 120% on board with it. It doesn't leave you entirely open for one, but it doesn't shut you down for one either. The character arcs are all good. Action's fantastic. Humor is good. It's honestly gorier than I would have expected. The steeple falling and smashing the guy's head is the goriest scene in the movie. Doesn't quite match up to what you'll see in a lot of more modern action films, especially Rambo films where somebody will literally just explode. There's none of that. The body count surprisingly low for an action film. And I think that kind of works in a weird way for the best. Because it's the idea of police work is the underlying thing. We see a lot of paperwork being done, which from IMDb's trivia meant a lot to a lot of police officers because it's something we never see in any police procedural film. Even now, I can't really name any that were heavy-handed in it, especially to this degree. So, all in all, what do I think of it? Well, favorite scene, kind of have a few. The final fight, really good. But I think it was the quiet moments between Angel and Danny. Oh, wait, I had to look at the notes for that one. Those quiet moments where they kind of get to know each other, and Danny's learning from Angel, and Angel's learning to kind of not be such a hard ass. Like, it's that perfect juxtaposition. These two characters would not get along. If you've ever seen 48 Hours, it's the Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy. One's a hard ass cop, one's a convict. These guys will not get along, but then they get along. It's one of those. It's a cliche, but this makes it work. And Peg and Frost's friendship absolutely helps sell that. I'll never be convinced that the two of them being such good friends doesn't help solidify their work in the Cornetto Trilogy. They do both appear in all three films. Now, since I did forget to mention it last time, I got to mention it right now. Why is it called the Cornetto Trilogy? Well, Edgar Wright's hangover cure is a Cornetto ice cream treat, which has 3 flavors. The red one for Shaun is the strawberry variety. The blue, representing the cops, is the regular original type. The next one is the mint chip flavored green, so that kind of gives you a hint on the next film. Least favorite part of this movie, can't really say. Nothing ever really ground into me too much. Really, I can't say there was any scene I disliked. I kind of disliked the Angel character at the beginning because he's just such a hard ass. He's hard to go with. But once he gets into Sanford and you kind of get caught into the mystery of it with him, then he clicks, you can ride with him. So where do I give it on a scale of 1 to 5? Absolutely enjoyable. I don't think it's a 5. It's definitely not a 1. I liked every scene. I liked the characters. I got to give it a 4 out of 5. And I don't think I'm stretching too much to say if I come back to it in another couple of years, it might hop up to a 5. I don't think it's going to drop. I think I might even pick up even more little cliche nods, winks. But for now, it's a very comfortable 4. I highly suggest seeing it. It pays off left, right, and center. So, thank you for watching. I've been Rob. Yeah. Take it easy, everybody.
Later.
Alright, well, it has come to my attention I should probably stop putting video links in the description and start just doing them at the end, because YouTube likes to put the little whatchamathingies up. In the last 2 videos, I've put little links to other channels and videos that I've kind of taken a bit of inspiration from. A lot of YouTubers have, of course, influenced me and kind of put me on this path. And I did mention Cinema Win's video on Hot Fuzz, so I'll try to link that one here. I might even put one in the description down below. You can check that out there. I think I'm going to start doing this and at the end of a lot of my reviews, because so many YouTubers have helped influence me over the years and kind of got me on here. If I haven't clicked onto somebody you've enjoyed here on YouTube who review things, movies, video games, anything like that, go ahead and put them down in the comments. I'll check them out. You never know. Anything like that might get me going on them, and I'll plug them later. So, yeah. Thanks for all the help.